Hey, what's going on? It's been a while since my last upload, but I apologize. But at the same time, I thought I'd make up to you by showing you something that hasn't been revealed. Well, at least not to the greater public. And that's this baby here. The Weebill 2 Pro by Zhiyun. Now, before I go into a little detail, this is widely available here in China. You can purchase this. It was released a couple of weeks ago already. So for those of you who are not in China, well, that just sucks. But the good thing, hey, you've subscribed to me and this is what kind of content you like to see, right? Unbiased first-hand review of products that is available, maybe not in the rest of the world, and in a language that you could possibly understand. So I'm going to give you my unbiased review of the Weebill 2, and this is the Pro package. I'm going to run some tests and then compare it with the DJI Ronin RS2. Now you might be saying, hey, why are you comparing these two? They're not in the same class. Well, yes and no. One, I want to give you an unbiased review, and this is what I have right now. So I don't have the RSC, so this will have to do. And number two, there are some similarities between the two, which I think I could share with you, right? And thirdly, in terms of price, now this is more expensive if you just buy the gimbal outright, but given this is the Pro package as well as other accessories that comes with this, it's gonna set the price around the same, if not more, than the RS2. Okay, so why not compare with the best and see if something like this, which is actually cheaper if you just buy the gimbal on its own, can compete with some of the flagship models here currently in the market. Okay, so without further ado, there's a lot to get through. Let's unbox this and let me go through the details. First things first, let's open this baby. No fancy b-roll, straight to the point, let's go. Boom! As you can see, for the first time, Zhiyun is now using a carrying case or carrying bag similar to that of the DJI Ronin, right? You can see very similar in size. This is actually slightly bigger. Material, very same, double layered. So you've got the top layer with pockets as well as the middle layer. But do keep in mind, this is not free. If you buy the base version, you do not get this carrying case. You only get the gimbal. This costs an extra 500 roughly RMB, which is around just under 80 or 90 US dollars. You've got your carry strap opened up. We've got all your cables that's going to connect with our transmitter as well as our follow focus. The first layer pouch, right? You've got this extra handle grip bar, which is very helpful. Your follow focus, tripod legs, and their transmitter. Version 2.0, so this is AI transmitter, as you can see. Open the bottom layer, and we've got further pouches, a lot more accessories and cables, a quick release plate, all the camera cables, the extended base plate. At the very bottom, we've got a gimbal. It's a very good looking gimbal. Let me put it together and compare the size. This is much smaller, right? Form factor, we've got a shorter hand grip, whereas the RS2 has a longer hand grip. We've got the extra extend arms of carbon fiber, while the RS2 makes it a bit longer, whereas the Zhiyun Weebill 2 is a lot shorter. Obviously, there's pros and cons with which, but in terms of form factor and size, the Weebill 2 is definitely smaller. But keep in mind now, this battery grip does come apart. So once you take it apart, obviously this is a lot smaller than the Zhiyun 2, which cannot be taken apart. So something to keep in mind, okay? Now for the first time, Weebill 2 cannot replace the batteries, right? It is not in the hand grip. I believe it's somewhere here in the body itself. It's not replaceable. You cannot take it out, so you need to charge it via a USB cable on the back. Whereas the RS2, you can replace the hand grip batteries, but it is very expensive. Battery wise, this is 9 hours on the spec sheet. This is 12 hours, but I can tell you now, both of these do not last the full hour that's on the spec sheet. One, because of how you use it, the weight of the camera, as well as the other features. For example, Zhiyun Weebill 2 now has a bigger screen, right? Whereas if you want to use the follow focus and the transmitter and powering your camera, it's going to drain more battery. Good thing is both of these are very capable on a daily use. If you shoot for a day, 6 hours, non-stop, no problems. Anything longer, you want to slightly watch out for, but overall I have not had any problems using this turned on for a full day use. Usually around 6 to 7 hours of constant use. Now in terms of the battery size, this is just over 2400 and this is 1900 milliamps. Now in terms of charging time, both of these are PD supported. From 0, it took me 10 minutes to get around 15% of battery, and then 90 minutes to a full charge. Whereas the Ronin RS, even though both has PD, this takes about 2 hours. So this charges a little bit quicker. Now moving up from the grip, we've got the design. This is very Zhiyun Weebill 2 design. It's got the handheld design that they initially launched, which I thought was very, very good and intuitive, right? First up at the front, we both have triggers. Now the RS2 feels a little better. It has a little bit more feedback, a more click tile, whereas the Weebill 2 is a little bit flat, muted, spongy, so to say. You can even tell by the sound, right? In terms of the rotating focus wheel, now RS2 is on your front index finger. On the Weebill 2, they've removed it and it's on the side. I actually like it having on the side instead of control everything with just one hand. It gives you more precise control while you're shooting. One drawback is that you might feel like you're not as stable because you're only holding by one hand. So this is based on your arm strength, obviously, and how heavy your camera load is. But I think having it separately on the side gives you more precise control of the exact focus. Whereas if you're just using the RS2, you know, you're moving, you're shooting, you're turning, and then you're also controlling the focus. It's a little bit harder focusing. Speaking of this, now because of the design is on the left hand side, this is very catered for the right hand users. This is a little joystick knob. Both have this at the front, okay? Both are very similar in terms of feel. I would say the Zhiyun is a little bit more softer, a little bit less of a resistance. That's because the knob actually extrudes out a little bit more, so you have more finer control. But I think both are very good, so no complaints here. In terms of other functions, very similar. You've got the record button, you've got a mode button here, and on the Zhiyun you just flick the switch, which I think is actually quite good. Very direct to the point, and you know exactly what you want. Now, speaking of the screen, this obviously is the biggest draw card for Weebill 2 this time around. In fact, any gimbal currently on the market. You can see here we've got a much smaller screen compared to the Weebill 2. This is huge, right? Relatively, if you compare the sizes. Okay, it's more than double the size of the actual display. I'm not talking about the glass here, I'm talking about the actual shown display between the two gimbals. Both are colored touchscreens. Having a bigger screen obviously has its benefits for you to actually monitor what you're shooting. So you can face down 90 degrees and then 90 degrees and then another roughly 45 degrees. So you get about 130 degrees roughly of turning angle. But for cameras that don't have a flip screen, or you don't want to adjust the weight while you're moving the screen, having this just makes it a lot easier, so you can look up or look down onto your screen. Now, how good is quality? I can tell you it's not that great. Don't expect for you to pixel peep on a screen like this. This is merely just for you to see what you're shooting, to get you a better idea of your composition, as well as some other features like accessing your quick menu, as well as focusing on your target. Color accuracy and picture quality, this is not something you're going for. In terms of functions and menus, this time Zhiyun makes it a lot easier for you to switch between the settings and as well as adjusting your gimbal's functions. You don't need the app anymore. Basically everything's done within the screen, and it's actually presets. So you have 3 different modes: low, medium, high, as well as very finite customizations between all your dead bands, your gimbals, and all your motor functions, right? So it makes it a lot easier for beginners. You can just choose low, medium, high, or if you really want the full customization, you can go to manual settings and adjust from 0 to 100 the exact settings you want. Now, gimbals these days are very, very similar in terms of functions and shootability, right? So you've got all the similar modes: the vortex mode, the inception POV mode, the go mode, the log pan and follow focus, as well as the selfie mode. Now, one thing to keep in mind, having a bigger screen does draw more battery, but you can press a button and then it will shut off the screen, so it goes to sleep mode and it uses less battery, and press it again, it will turn on. Got a 1/4 inch screw, so you can actually bolt on a additional handle so you have a better grip. Let me show you what this is like. Okay, so you've got a little accessory here. So it clamps on. There is a slider here where it locks the side so it doesn't fall off, and you just slide it on when you need to use it. Pretty simple. So here we go, let me show you. And there you have it, the extended grip for you to do, you know, top-down shots. And on the top, you've also got a cold shoe as well as 2 other 1/4 inch mounts. And on the side, there is another 1/4 inch mount. Now, keep in mind, this is not a NATO rail, so it is Zhiyun proprietary. You can't use any other NATO accessories. RS2, this is actually a NATO rail, so you can't actually fit this on. You can see it's a lot bigger, but you can use other accessories, and obviously you can extend and make it into a top-down shot handle, but you need to have the handle, you know, purchased. Okay, now moving up, let's look at the gimbal itself, the actual 3-axis. Now, we also have the 3-axis lock, which is very similar this time. The only difference is this is carbon fiber, real carbon fiber. Obviously you're paying for it, but it is very light. In terms of adjustability, both are very similar. I've tested my camera, which you're seeing right now. It's the Sony a7S III with the GM lens at 24-70, so quite heavy. It's roughly around 3 kilos, including the follow focus as well as the other accessories that I've attached to. So I'm just under 3 kilos and there's no problem, which I'll go out and test and show you later on. And now the RS2 is more capable because it is flagship, so you can carry a little bit more weight than this one. But, you know, for everyday use like you and I, if you're using an A7S or a Canon, you know, R5, not a problem. Either gimbals. Okay, so in terms of adjustability, and I want to show you something. RS2, I think this has one thing going for it, is that it's got a good and bad. It's got a quick release plate, so you can adjust and fix your gimbal to a state, take it off, shoot, and put it back on relatively easy, and you don't need to adjust it again. Whereas the Weebill 2 is using the traditional mounting plates. Now you will need to mount this to your camera and then slide it on and off every time you want to take it off and shoot. It's not a big hassle, but just something to keep in mind. You will need to readjust the actual rail slider to make sure every time your camera is correctly balanced. To adjust your horizontal balance, you will need to adjust the actual plate itself by going left and right. Good and bad, you can fit a bigger camera on here, but you cannot adjust on the gimbal itself. Whereas the Ronin, you can adjust the back, so you can see you can just slide it across. The plate itself cannot move left and right, which then means that you obviously are restricted to a size of camera that's on the plate itself. Good and bad for both of each, but something to let you know and keep in mind. Now for portrait shooters out there, one click of a button, both of these go into flash mode, which basically is a top-down shot like this, right? So you would need a top handle to really keep it balanced and make it easy for you to shoot. So for the RS2, it's exactly like this as well, but you will need an extra handle, so keep that in mind. Now from the test footage, you can tell it is actually quite stable relatively compared to the top model DJI RS2. There are a couple of instances where you can see a little bit of shake, but this is inevitable with all the gimbals, given that it is a 100mm lens. Okay, now for those of you who are considering buying the Pro model, you are getting this transmitter as well as the follow focus. What you get is additional feed into your screen, which you can actually use to see what you're shooting. With that, of course, comes with additional feature, and that's active track. Now you get that a lot in the RS2 as well, which you need to purchase the transmitter as well, called the Raven Eye. One click of a button, you start tracking your active subject, and as it moves around, it follows the subject. It's not perfect. Zhiyun obviously could upgrade from future firmware updates, but from my testing overall, it seems to be able to track your object fairly well if you're traveling at a fair distance at a slow to medium pace. If you start running, you're going to lose your subject, right? Even though it's able to track 360 degrees, you will lose your subject, especially if you have a foreground background intercross. I think the way the calculation is done is based on contrast and color. So if you're wearing similar clothing and you walk in between an object, it often would actually lose that subject. But it does work, but it's not perfect, okay? And of course, you know, the follow focus works very well, as well as you can actually adjust this knob to adjust the ISO, aperture, and the shutter speed, which is great for the Sony cameras. You can do this with the other cameras as well. Check on the website to see what is compatible, but the Canon R5 is compatible as well. Now, in terms of screen quality, like I said before, this is not something you want to use to say gauge your color accuracy, or it is coming through the wireless transmitter, so you are going to lose a little bit of quality here. In terms of latency, it is very, very good. And if this screen is still not big enough for you and you want a bigger screen and a separate controller, you can get one of these. Now, I'm not sure this will be available on the first launch when overseas, but this costs additional roughly 1,000 RMB, which is around just 100 and 150 US dollars. But you can control your gimbal as well as all the functions on here. And in terms of latency, it is very good, right? It is very, very good. Use your knob to control the follow focus and the aperture and make all the adjustments and record straight onto this with an SD card. It comes with a built-in battery, and if you want, you can use an MP battery and just plug it into the back and you've got more power. Okay, I think that's a fairly comprehensive review of the Weebill 2. And like I said, this is unbiased, unpaid reviews, so feel free to like and share it with that friend of yours who could be making an impulsive purchase. And if you like these pre-launch reviews, feel free to subscribe, and hopefully I can give you more of exciting content. I'm George, and I'll catch you next week. Cheers.